The play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners, coming to you from the world headquarters of Agile Marketing. With me, as always, the Hall of Famer and my good friend, Bill Robertson. Good afternoon, Billy Rob.
How you doing, Patrick?
Hey, Bill, I'm good on this balmy day. It's a good thing neither of us had a tea time today because I think the only birdies we'd see today are mallards. It's about 50 degrees and rain here in Minnesota today as we get ready to head into the holiday weekend. So not exactly a balmy, perfect day in Minnesota, but a good day to riff on sports.
Absolutely. It's certainly not golf weather or baseball weather outside right now.
Now, you've had a chance to tee it up a couple of times this year, right?
I have not enough, but I have teed it up 3 times so far. I wish I had about 13 in, but I only have 3 in. And it's first 2 rounds were outstanding. And the round I had over the weekend was challenging at best, but that's the game of golf. Sometimes you play well and sometimes you don't.
More birdies or bogeys? No, don't answer that. I know the question. I know the answer to that question. Well, Bill, always great to see you. You know, it's a really unique time in the world of sports. It's a unique time in the world, period, right? But we're finally seeing fans going back into arenas and ballparks and stadiums. As we speak today, some teams are going back to full capacity in their venues. And it seems that the appetite for sports is really pretty strong coming out of the pandemic. First of all, have you had a chance to get to any live sporting events over the last couple of weeks or month?
I have not been to a live sporting event other than the WCHA's playoffs and their championship weekend, which had limited fans. At that point, it was in the state of Minnesota, it was 250 fans was the maximum capacity. So it was quite a bit different without fans. Now the games were all on television and streamed and there were media in the building, but we certainly did not have the atmosphere nor the revenues, Patrick, that you'd have getting into a full capacity. But I'm happy that sports are going in this direction, not only from a participation point of view that people are getting out, but also fans are coming back. And I think the most important thing in my mind is that they still have to be cautious and do it safely. But I do think for our viewers out there, they're going to have to understand this, that it is going to be a bit different as you walk into a ballpark, walk into a soccer stadium, walk into a football field. It's going to be different and in a lot of different ways. And that will be the telling tale. And I don't think it's going to be quite so easy that the fans are going to just flock to these games. I think it's going to be a dip your toe in the water type scenario. And I don't mean doom and gloom. I mean, they're just going to kind of wait and see how it goes and see what their friends say. And then I'll start coming back. But I do believe by the time we get to the fall, Patrick, we'll be at a full capacity. And that plays right into the hands for the NFL and college football for sure. But certainly for fans going out this summer, I think you're going to see increased capacities but a different way of watching the game, in particular with concessions and interaction with the players. I don't know if you have a different opinion on that, but I think that that's the way it's going to go.
I think, Bill, that there is a contingent of fans who are not yet comfortable going into a packed arena and sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers. That will take some time. We're seeing an appetite for sports, and that's a great thing. But you can't simply flip a switch, I think, coming out of the pandemic and expect everything to go back to the way that it was before. And the way that sports teams handle fans will change and has changed pretty dramatically, I think. We're certainly seeing more cashless venues. more ticketless venues, more touchless experiences for fans, right? I mean, if necessity is the mother of invention, we've seen teams have to adapt to what will be a brave new world in fans attending sporting events. You're not going to see fans belly up to the hot dog stand anymore, right? In the same way we did in the past. You're not going to see vendors in the aisles passing hot dogs through 6 hands before it gets to the patron it's intended for. I think it's going to be a much more grab and go cashless experience.
And in some ways that can work for a younger generation of people, that they're fine with that. They've adapted to that already. I get concerned, and I do this with tickets as well, is paperless tickets these days, is that how the older fans are going to adapt to this kind of scenario where you go to a game and there's not going to be hot dogs and mustard put on your hot dog and passed down the aisle, as you said, or are they going to have a beer vendor or soda pop vendor? I don't know if that will happen again. Peanuts are the same. Would you pass your peanuts to the guy next to you anymore and have them put their hand into your bag? There's all sorts of things that are going to change. But I do think that the biggest concern I have, Patrick, in all of this is fans need to feel safe about going to a game, but also the generation, which I'll call anybody over the age of 40, is how are they going to get their tickets? Now, if you have a smartphone, you have a Samsung or an iPhone, you can put those on your phone. How do you transfer your tickets over? And I know that my parents, when they were living, never would have been able to figure that piece out. And I'm very concerned. And I believe that the sports franchises are going to have to do a really good job of figuring that piece out, whether they have booths outside the gates that will help people put the tickets on their phone in a safe capacity. So fans can say, I don't have to worry. I can just go to the venue and I'll wait in line and they'll help me with that piece before I even enter the stadium. But I'm very concerned about how that works. I understand the efficiencies, but I also know that there's a lot of people that don't want to go to a game because they don't know how they're going to put their tickets on the phone. And if they don't have the smartphone and they have a flip phone, or they don't have a phone, how are they getting into the venue?
I think that's hugely important in baseball in particular, Bill, because I think the average baseball fan is something like 55, 56 years old, right? Now,
yes.
And if you get people in 60s, 70s who haven't grown up with technology in the same way somebody who's much younger has, that's a problem. And you don't want to give a fan a reason not to buy a ticket, right? And anything that's viewed as too cumbersome, too complicated, challenging, maybe even embarrassing, get to the gate and you don't know what you're doing, that's a reason not to buy a ticket. So I think it is incumbent upon teams to find ways to communicate effectively with their fan base and make sure that everybody, despite their age, is comfortable and is welcome at the ballpark.
Yeah, it'll have to be managed. And I'm sure this year will be another learning experience for all sports teams. And right now we're in the throes in the late spring here going into summer. Baseball is certainly going to be affected by this. Golf will be affected, and then soccer until we get into the fall. And then you have WNBA happening as well. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all transpires over time. I know that, for me, I look at it is that I hear conflicting reports, Patrick, on things like TV ratings. Early on and during the pandemic, it was said that TV ratings were not good. And I thought they would be outstanding through the charts because it was live sports programming and content, which people were after so much and missed so much. But I don't know what's going to happen with ratings going forward. People are streaming on their phones. Is that calculated into TV ratings? I know the Nielsen ratings have changed the dynamics and how they're measured. For me, I just don't know what that means, but I've been told events like the PGA Championship and golf, baseball ratings are up other sports are down. So I don't know what it means and how going forward TV ratings will be affected by all of this with coming out of a pandemic and then people trying to go back to sporting events. And what is the other fans left to do? Maybe you have an opinion on that.
You know, Bill, it really is hard to say. You know, there's a lot of cord cutting going on right now. We know that the cost of cable has gotten extremely high. It can be $150, $200 a month, mainly due to sports. And, you know, that's a big bill for somebody to pay, you know, to sit and watch, traditional television. So cords are being cut. How that affects sports, you know, I think it is having an impact. Most of us become sports fans by watching the game first on television, right? And if you don't have access to it or you're not watching it, your level of passion probably decreases some. So as we see more and more people cutting off cable, maybe going to streaming services, but not watching an entire game. You know, I think the era of most people sitting down and watching a 3-hour baseball game or football game, I think that's over. Particularly younger generation wants it in snack-sized pieces, right? So, all of it's having a pretty significant impact on sports, and I think it'll really play out over the next couple of years.
And why do you think that people, I know the younger generation for sure, want to watch games and snippets, or they just want to see highlights on Instagram, on Facebook Live, or wherever? They don't want to watch Snapchat. They want to see all this stuff instantly and don't want to wait 3 hours or more, where you and I may sit and watch a baseball game together because we want to have beer and peanuts and hot dogs or a soda pop or whatever the case may be. It's certainly different. I'm trying to understand what's happened to sports fans and why it's changed so much. Maybe you have a thought on that.
Well, first of all, you know, maybe soda pop for you, but I'm having a beer. Okay. Maybe two.
Or a glass of wine for that matter, right?
You know, Bill, I think it's changed because our attention spans have changed, right? You know, we have so many distractions in our lives. We have the world at our fingertips in smartphones. We can be entertained constantly. And if something bores us, even for a moment, it allows us to look at something else, right? And so when we were young and watching a football game on Sunday afternoon, that was appointment television. You knew from kickoff at noon until 3 o'clock, you were watching the game. Then you didn't have a lot of other distractions. Today, you can do anything you want. You know, action stops, you can watch some videos, listen to some music. You can, you know, check out your social media posts. So I think it just stands to reason that the younger generation is not going to put up with all of the delays and stoppages and, you know, expect to look at one thing for 3 hours. It's not going to happen. And, you know, sports is trying to figure out how to deal with that. And, you know, one of the ways is that they're feeding a constant flow of information during games. Right? You go to a baseball game, most of the people look around. Their heads aren't looking at the field. They're looking at their smartphone. And a lot of that is coming from the team because they know that what's happening on the field in some ways is so, I don't want to say boring, but it's not capturing the imagination of the fans in such a way that they feel like they can just let the fans sit there. They need to show them something, give them something to keep them entertained.
And for me, as a baseball purist, I can go to a game and look at so many different nuances on the field. That's why I want to go. I see that Major League Baseball viewership is up. We know that on television, and I think that's a good thing on a national level. But I know this, Patrick, that fans all across the country are up in arms over several issues. One is the pace of play. A lot of people are also up in arms over these extra innings with a man on second base. This morning, I was listening on the radio to MLB radio network, and they were talking about changes need to happen in the shift and not let players get on the grass, and they have to stay on the dirt. That would be one way to alleviate some of that. So those are some of the things that I see that are changes. And of course, last year they had the designated hitter in both leagues. And I like that myself. It's not the purest form of baseball if you're a real purist, but I thought it added another element. And I think both leagues need to get on the same page under the Major League Baseball umbrella and figure that out. But all these changes in baseball seem to have people up in arms, and some like these changes and many don't. And of course, that's the way the world works. Some people are going to like this stuff, but I certainly see it as baseball's trying to throw things out there, and because it's such a traditional sport that they feel like they have to, because right now they're, if I have this right, they're third in the team sports era. Football is obviously number one. Basketball is two. Baseball 3, hockey 4, and soccer follows that. And we're not even counting golf, tennis, or attending your son or daughter's high school or grade school sporting events. So it's gonna change again. And I want to see what baseball has to do if they want to continue to get these ratings going. But the biggest thing I think is, we touched on it earlier, is the pace of play in a game.
Yeah, pace of play is a real issue for Major League Baseball, and it has been for a while. I think the average game this year in 2021 is 3 hours and 9 minutes. The record over the course of a season was 3 hours and 10 minutes 2 years ago. So all of these efforts that Major League Baseball has implemented to try to speed up the game has meant virtually nothing, right? So, with games that start at 7 o'clock, 7:15 on a weeknight, means that as a fan, if you stay till the end, you're getting out at 10:15. By the time you get home, it might be 11 o'clock. That's tough. And it's tough to keep your attention for that long. So I worry a little bit about the future of baseball. Now, it's been given a death sentence a number of times, and it always finds a way to survive. And baseball probably will again. But I think that they're at a precarious time, because if you look at the generation coming up, Generation Z, those born from 1995 to 2010, it's only about half of that generation that says they're sports fans. And
yes,
and then, baseball being the deliberate game that it is, with so much stoppage. In fact, I think it's something like 4 minutes is the average time between a ball is put in play in a game. That's a lot of downtime. And I don't know that the younger generation is going to adapt to that.
Well, we talked off camera too, and another piece, and this affects baseball quite a bit, but also affects all sports now, is the advent of video replay. And as a commissioner of a college hockey conference, I think video replay plays a role, because we want to get the call right. And they're so fast, the games move so fast, and plays happen. You need to look at that. But I also think it's a detriment, and it's a crutch for umpires and officials. And it's causing the games to drag on and on and on. And the other thing that's happened, as we have discussed off camera before, there are no more characters like Earl Weaver and Sparky Anderson, Billy Martin. Those are three. Bobby Cox, those guys would come out and argue at home plate. And that's just the sport of baseball. We're not even talking about hockey and basketball, the arguments, and then football too, after plays happen. And certainly they're not going to get all the plays right. But I read a stat where Major League Baseball did an analysis that 93 or 96% of all balls and strikes were called correctly by the home plate umpire. That's fantastic in my mind. with a margin like that, even if it's 90%. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and the catchers are framing. But the point being is this video replay is costing fans a lot of time sitting in their seats, and maybe major league teams would like this and think it's a good thing.
Well, I think, the fans have almost come to expect it, right? I mean, if there's a call that's at all controversial, it seems to go to replay. They want to get it right. I get that. But, it is having an impact on the game, certainly slowing the pace of the games. So I'm not sure that it's a good thing in the end. Personally, I like the human element, and I liked it when Billy Martin would come charging out of the dugout to argue a call and go nose to nose with the umpire. That was part of the show. Now what happens? The manager looks over to his video guy, said, did they get it right or did they get it wrong? If he thinks he got it wrong, they throw the flag, the challenge, the call, and there's no drama. There's no excitement in that.
Well, and you look at like YouTube videos, Patrick, the highest rated YouTube sports videos are the arguments between managers, coaches, and the officials on the ice, on the court, on the diamond. And I think if you ever go look at those, they're so funny, and you can do those for hours, but it's so fun to see all that inertia. Another question I want to ask, let's shift gears here for a little bit on video replay. The game of golf, which is one of your favorites. And I know you're not playing right now, and hopefully you'll be back playing real soon. The numbers are up, the amount of participants playing the game. Do you think that the pandemic has helped the game of golf, or do you think it's just that people are finding other things to do outside, and golf is just one of those for the popularity of the sport as a participant sport?
Well, first of all, as a passionate golfer, I'm thrilled to see people back on the links. It's great for the courses. It's such a wonderful sport, and it's had its moments, and then it's nosedive. I think a big part of why golf enjoyed a resurgence during the pandemic. One, it gave you an opportunity to get outside and be around some other people, but in a safe environment. But two, the pandemic shut down a lot of youth sports. And where do parents go on weeknights, weekends when their children are playing? They go to the games. Well, without those games, mom and dad had a little bit more time for activities like golf. So I think it's been fantastic. Whether the surge continues, I guess we'll see. I know it's a really tough sport. Tough to master. In fact, nobody really does. It's not cheap, and it takes time. So whether people are just sort of dipping their toe back into the game of golf, and maybe we'll step back out now that youth sports are starting again, or they realize how hard it is and it costs some money, or not, I hope it continues to perform strongly.
Do you believe that with Phil Mickelson recently winning the PGA Championship at the age of 50 plus, he's almost 51, do you think that's going to help older generations of fans to say, I'm going to try this again? People that gave up the game or say it's too hard or costs too much, the things you just mentioned, I think it helps. I was so happy to see that this past weekend. And I think some people will look at that and go, this is great. I'm going to go back out there.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. Listen, the greatest surges in golf happen when somebody really dynamic is on the scene, right? We saw the surge when Tiger Woods hit the scene in the late 90s, Arnold Palmer. And when somebody like Phil Mickelson, who's been around for decades and is a household name, at 50 becomes the oldest player ever to win a major championship. It was great for the television ratings. I was at a luncheon yesterday. It was the talk of the luncheon. Everybody was happy to see it happen. And I think it just feeds into the interest and passion for the game. Hey,
Right?
before we go, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask you quickly about the Olympics. Olympics are scheduled to take place in Tokyo in less than 2 months. But over half of the population in Japan thinks they should be canceled. In fact, I think it's somewhere near 80%. They haven't controlled the virus there quite the same way that we have here over the last few months. You think the games will go on?
Well, I think they're at a crossroads right now. In my opinion, with the outbreak still going on, and I don't know if Tokyo can make sure that this happens. To be honest, I really am concerned. I think within the next 2 weeks, the USOC may pull the plug on the Olympics, and there's lots of ramifications from that. Money, they already canceled it once. Now they're cancel again. At the end of the day, the safety of those athletes going over there and their families, if they're going over at all, a lot of high-end athletes have backed out already because they don't want to put themselves through that, or their families, and the travel and getting back and all those things. So I think they're at a crossroads. I would think they'd have to make a decision here within the next 2 weeks. If I was a betting man, I would say the Olympics will happen, but I think there's going to be a lot more athletes bogging out here at the end because of the uncertainty of how it's going to be handled when they get there.
Yeah, think of the billions and billions of dollars that have been spent on venues in Japan to prepare for the Olympics, all the work that goes into it, and to have it postponed once and then maybe canceled is really, really remarkable. Well, Bill, we've come to the end of our time. We could go on for another half an hour, maybe a couple of hours. Always enjoy the conversation, my friend. We'll pick it up, I'm sure, on the golf course here soon. But great to see you. Thanks for the chat today. And thank all of you for watching Behind the Game. We'll see you again soon.